my friend
Shubham.
from AFTP and Pitamji from Tatvam, Shubham from Webtel and the entire Webtel team and my learned co-speakers. Good evening to all of you. And certainly the August gathering, which is here at this wonderful platform. At the beginning, I would like to thank each one of the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Friends, I have been listening to the entire discussion, uh, starting with High Court judgments and then followed on. And now at the around the closure of the program, which is centrally located or based upon the jurisprudence which has been established in recent past, linked with the international precedences set up by the honorable courts. Now we have reached to something uh, which is certainly last in the ladder. Please excuse me for my bad throat today. It's been days now. I've been continuously speaking for hours, so mm, the result is in front of you. But certainly, I'll try to do justice to the uh, job given to me. So now, in the ladder, in the hierarchy, the last comes with the AAR, Advanced Ruling Authorities. Friends, the law, when was it invented? On 1st July 2017. The provision was very much there in the law since the inception of the law. First of all, I'll give just 5 minutes background, just set the tone of AAR rulings because we have understood, we have listened to various landmark honorable high courts judgments, and even Kapilji and Govind discussed about Supreme Court judgment, Calcutta Club judgment, recent judgment. That is a beautiful landmark judgment with respect to principle of mutuality. But friends, so far as advanced ruling authorities, judgments or decisions are concerned, let's be very clear about it if you ask me at the beginning that these judgments are applicable only to the applicants who have actually sought it. So, unlike the High Court and Honorable Apex Court judgments or the precedents set by them, the ratio laid down under these AARs are more particularly applicable to only the applicants who have actually sought the rulings and the concerned respective proper officers, jurisdictional officers of those applicants, unless those are not being challenging AAR, authority, appellate authority for advanced ruling. So let's be very clear at the beginning. So I have selected a few AAR judgments for your perusal, and uh, let me share my screen for showing you the PPT. Yeah, I think it is visible now.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
please. Thank you, Shubham. Thank you. Just a second. Let's start with the first one. Hmm. So I have selected 6, 7 advanced rulings, and all those are covering some or the other significant aspects. Again, as I was referring to the situation that advanced rulings are not applicable pervasively, but certainly, and more, even if I say that these advanced ruling judgments, decisions made by honorable rulings, honorable authorities, but these are applicable to the applicant, but somehow or the other, at least the mindset of the department, the people who are administrating the law, although it is it is in devoid of the legal and technical members independently being into the authority, so it can be devoid of some application of legal, I would say, wisdom. And more importantly, it is given by the departments themselves. So it may have some, it may not be completely uh, away from the prejudices which may apply while giving these rulings. So one should be very careful while applying. Many times people ask me that departments have raised or issued show cause notices on the basis of these advance rulings. Like there was an advance ruling in 2018, We Serve Global, Honorable Maharashtra Advance Ruling Authority, and the department started a spree of sending various notices on the basis of that advance ruling. To my humble view, whatever little I have understood so far as application of law and acceptability of the jurisprudence established by various courts is concerned, as the law itself, section 97 itself clearly defines that the advance ruling is applicable only to the applicant. So, applying the ratio of the judgments given in these rulings uh, to a blanket to the entire set of taxpayers would not stand the, I would say, the wisdom of the judiciary in times to come. And various show cause notices have been issued on these basis. Even I have come across one specific aspect with respect to this, that on one advance ruling which is being pronounced in GST regime, a show cause in service tax was issued on the similar grounds. The grounds or the case relied upon by the issuing authority is an advance ruling judgment in GST, and the same is used in service tax matter. So it would be very difficult, to my humble view, to sustain the charges leveled against the taxpayer through this particular show cause. So uh, we need to be careful while applying these judgments. But yes, some or the other, I would say, mindset or the kind of the approach with which the department goes for the various issues. It is depicted through these advanced ruling judgments, and sometimes there are some conflicting rulings also. Some, and there are various other questions also with respect to advanced rulings. So, but I'm not going into those details, and I'm starting with one. Conflicting advanced ruling judgment only to begin with. This is first is this Synthite Industries, which is issued by the Kerala Advanced Ruling Authority in March 2018. They were doing business of spices and spice products, and they were doing some transactions with respect to uh, Schedule 3. They were buying some material from outside India and selling outside India from one non-taxable territory to another non-taxable territory. So the Synthite Industries judgment ruling has come in this way. The question was whether on procuring goods from China in a context where the goods purchased are not brought into India, whether GST is applicable by them. And another two questions which was being raised. This is very interesting. This is in fact before the amendment which was being brought into Schedule 3 by way of Amendment Act 2018, wherein Schedule 3 has said, even before the amendment, we used to say this with all conviction that if one particular uh, goods have never touched the custom frontiers of India, have never been brought to India, the supply of goods from one non-taxable territory to another non-taxable territory would not be taxed here in GST, because this is a Schedule 3 item. It is somewhat, you may say, high sea sales or something from one non-taxable territory to another non-taxable territory would never be subject matter of GST. And the similar judgment has been given in the Synthite Industries. Uh, the goods are liable to IGST when they are imported into India, and the IGST is payable at the time of importation. The applicant is neither liable to GST on the sale of goods procured from China and directly supplied to USA, nor on the sale of goods stored in warehouse in Netherlands after being procured from China to customers in and around Netherlands, as the goods are not imported into India at any point. So this is one something which is very much in line with the I would say the spirit of law, and they have said that something which has never come to India would never be subject to tax here in India. So from one non-taxable territory to another. But there is a conflicting ruling which has been issued very recently in Gujarat. So uh, they said that GST is payable on goods sold to customers located outside India, where goods are supplied directly from vendor's premises to the customer premises. So I have started, vendor is outside India, customer is outside India, both are outside India. In Synthite Industries, Honorable Kerala Authority is saying that it is outside the preview, and the Gujarat Advanced Ruling Authority is saying that it is within the preview. So, why? Because I have selected the very first ruling as a conflicting one, because I wanted to convey the message loud and clear that before actually going with the ratios laid down by these rulings, one must be very much well versed with the present law and certainly with other high court judgments. Because the topic is given to me about advanced rulings, so that is why. Otherwise, that is why I am actually uh, talking about these. But otherwise, if you ask me personally, I do not I do not pay much attention to these rulings. But yes, I may read some of the rulings just to buy some mindset which being applied by the department. Otherwise, generally not. Then another issue which I wanted to touch base through taking this We Serve Global ruling, Maharashtra Advanced Ruling Authority. Basically, what happens is this is a issue with which is revolving around the back office arrangements here in India. This visa was providing some back office facilities outsourced to a organization situated in United States. Then they were providing some basically office back office some invoicing or some documentation and some other these type of activities. In addition to that, they were providing some client procurement activity also. They were searching some clients, and they were making the clients here in India, the prospective buyers in here in India, to meet their USA based principle. So somehow the other, this advanced ruling authority said that the visa is basically giving an intermediary service, and because of the intermediary service, uh, basically they have treated this according to section 13 subsection 8 clause B of IGST Act. They have treated this supply, the place of supply is here in India, where the supplier of services were situated, that is We Serve Global. So they consider it as intermediary and POS here in India. So the status of zero rated supply is being withdrawn. So on the basis of this advanced ruling, many, I would say majority refunds which were available to ITES organizations, IT enabled services organizations, were being rejected, withheld, and rather they were being served notices to tax their entire transactions, considering them domestic supplies instead of zero rated. So zero rated status as per section 16 which were given to them of IGST were being withdrawn by the authorities. And this has created much hue and cry across these IT enabled service sector, which has been many a times have been referred by SHM also across all the forums of the government, including GST Council. And then they later they came out with some circular clarifying the situation also. But there are various, I would say, CSTAT judgments in the erstwhile regime, which clarified the intermediary services, even the CBEC then, now CBIC, have given issued a basically a FAQ on and the education guide also on this particular activity, and they have very much laid down the criteria on the basis of which any service or any activity would be considered to be an intermediary service. So, and there are various other CSTAT judgments as well in the erstwhile regime. To my humble view, the key element is that the absence of the agent and principal relationship. If the services provided here, services provided by the partner here in India is not dependent upon the outcomes or the results which are available to the principal outside India. Let me repeat it. If my consideration, if my fee or the consideration which is to be charged under a contract not dependent upon the outcome of the activities performed by me at the principal's end, then to my humble view, the principal and agency relationship, agent relationship would be completely can be ruled out. And here, the most important document for me is the agreement. What does it say? So agreement would only be laid out. That is the constitution of the transaction. So whether there is an agency or principal relationship or not, if that would be, then certainly it can be considered to be an intermediary service here in India, and the POS would be here where the supplier of service is situated. So that is why I tried to cover this aspect, because this is something which is creating trouble across the board. Then another important thing on which even the GST Council has come out with one draft circular as well, but they never released it. There are other draft circulars also lying with them, which they have never released. Even there is a draft circular available on discounts and incentives also with the GST Council, which has never ever come and seen the light of the day. This Columbia Asia Hospitals, this is again a early days advanced ruling, which is also highlighting one of the significant issues, which is which has not yet come into litigation much. But to my view, it would create some trouble in times to come if not addressed timely. Although the issue which is arising out of this particular situation, is scenario, would be largely revenue neutral. But yes, because the supply which is being considered here under this Columbia Asia Hospital judgment, certainly it would create trouble for the organizations which have multiple presence in the country, and one particular place is doing majority of activities on behalf of the rest of the country locations. Basically the facts of the ruling was that India Management Office, the corporate office, was in Karnataka, and uh, it was actually doing the entire set of works with respect to IT management, with respect to administration, with respect to taxation issues, accounting, HR. All these functions were centralized at corporate office in Karnataka, and the applicant went to the advanced ruling authority and asked for that whether it shall be treated to be supply of service under Schedule 3, because what happens is that there are employees who are employed at the HO head office, the corporate office, or India Management Office, whatever the name you may call it. Employees are employed at HO, but they are working for rest of the country, all the locations in the country. Now, what would happen? Whether the question was, which was being asked, whether the employees which have been hired at HO are providing services to the employer, whether the distinct persons also would be considered to be supply made by the employees to the employers only as per entry 1 of schedule 3 and would be outside the preview of GST. That was the moot question, my dear friends. And but the advanced ruling authority considered it in a different manner and considered it as an entry 2 of schedule 1, wherein the supply made between distinct persons, even if made without consideration, distinct person, section 24 subsection 4 of the act, one PAN, more than one GSTIN, distinct person. So if the supply is made between distinct persons, even if made without consideration, would be subject matter of GST and considered to be supply. And section 7 attracts, along with read with section 9, the levy. So the advanced ruling authority said that it is considered to be a supply made between distinct persons, even if made without consideration. So commonly we call this particular kind of a supply of services amongst the various GSTINs of one PAN is cross charge. And the similar word which we have been knowing in past also is input service distributor. There is a difference between ISD and cross charge also, but advanced ruling authority considered this supply of service as a cross charge where all the employees working for the entire group of locations spread across the country, they are working centrally at one place but providing services to all the other locations of the country. So they consider it as this. So this cross charge, which is commonly known in common parlance with us, this cross charge is something which is going to, in times to come, trouble us, especially those organizations which have multiple locations in the country and having centralized location which is serving for the entire country. So, and how is it different from ISD? That input service distributor, like it was earlier in the earlier law also in service tax regime also, that the concept was there and the same is being brought in GST as well. The most important difference between ISD and this cross charge would be, then the next second question would be the valuation for making cross charge, doing cross charge amongst the various GSTINs on the same PAN. ISD would be accumulating the services, the inward supply of services which are being received at one location but used by multiple locations, so that the credit shall be distributed on those inward supply of services. But here, what you call that, the cross charge, in the cross charge, HO would be accumulating the various inward supplies in the form of employees also, which are not necessarily would lead to rise to accumulation of input tax credit. But this is the supply of service which is made by HO on behalf of various other locations. So that way, next question arises in case of cross charge, would that be of valuation? So valuation rule is there in case of distinct persons and related persons. If the why am I actually taking you to the valuation rule also? Because somewhat this judgment ruling says that this is applicable to cross charge. There is no other jurisprudence, at least in GST, established as yet with respect to this aspect. But yes, valuation would be important. At what value? Of course, we have to identify the total cost and would require to apportion the total cost which is accumulated at HO to various locations. But yes, valuation can be accepted. Open market value can be accepted any value, wherein in case of specifically distinct persons or related person, wherein the recipient, if the recipient gets the full credit, then any value can be considered to be open market value made between distinct persons. So that way you can, of course, but you have to raise a continuous supply of invoice across the country to all the locations, accumulating all the cost which is being attributed to providing services to various services to provided to all the locations in the country. So this was about this thing which I wanted to touch base. Next, this concept of mutuality is being covered at greater length by all my predecessors, all my learned colleagues in the program. So I am not going into this Lions Club advanced ruling uh, because it advanced ruling has said that in case of concept of mutuality, no GST. Then when it went to AAAR, then they said that it is supply made between amongst the members of the club only, and it would be subject to GST. But of course, Calcutta Club principle of mutuality, whether that Calcutta Club judgment of Honorable Apex Court can apply to GST regime, is being very well taken by the previous speaker. So I'm not going into those details. This is with regard to Sanofi India. This is with regard to Shubham. Please tell me the what is the maximum now time available with me left with me.
Sir, I think 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, I'll finish it in 10 minutes now. Uh, so next, Sanofi India. It was with respect to basically the discount schemes or business promotion schemes. They came out with some loyalty program called Shubh Labh loyalty program. So the question was asked by them that whether that input tax credit on expenses incurred towards professional schemes of Shubh Labh loyalty program is available or not. So the Honorable Advanced Ruling Authority answered this in negative, and they said that it is not available. My dear friends, this also raises a very, very important question. When we talk about section 17, subsection 5, clause H, that is the blocked credit. It talks about uh, goods lost, destroyed, or written off by way of gifts or free samples. That clause reads like this: goods lost, destroyed, or written off by way of or disposed of by way of gifts or free samples. My dear friends, to my humble view, these goods which have been used to promote business activities, even of course the time is short, otherwise I would have taken you to the CSR expenditure also. I can prove it with the jurisprudence only, that the CSR expenditure, whether mandatory or non-mandatory, if incurred by the organization, that is towards the image building, that is towards in the course or furtherance of business only. So the moot question, my dear friends, for allowability of any credit revolves around two basically criteria. First, whether it is incurred in the course or furtherance of business or not. Second, whether it is blocked under section 17 subsection 5 or not. My dear friends, even CSR expenditure, whether mandatory or non-mandatory, even during CSR expenditure, I have been speaking on the top of my voice during the entire pandemic that CSR expenditure, the specific circular should come out and explaining that CSR expenditure made by the corporates under this pandemic time would be allowed as input tax credit categorically. Although, in my humble view, even the various Supreme Court judgments and High Court judgments and tribunal judgments are there, which they say that even the non-availability of deduction under income tax is because of the expressive provision under section 37 of the Income Tax Act 1961. Unlike the GST law, there is no expressive provision resulting into blockage of credit. And when we talk of 17.5H also, I can tell you with all my conviction that the goods disposed of, the word disposed of have been beautifully narrated by the Apex Court. When we say even the dictionary meaning of disposed of is something wherein there is no value attached anymore to the goods or things belonging to us, then only we use the word disposed of. So when we go in the court of law and explain the situation, and various on the basis of various other jurisprudence already established by the various courts of the country, disposed of doesn't mean that when the gifts are given for the promotion of the business or free samples are given for the promotion of the business, that would fall into it. So to my humble view, 17(5)(h) would not apply to business promotion expenditures. From day one, I was of this firm view. Even when I say that CSR, corporate social responsibility expenditure, also is very much within the preview of allowability of input tax credit, then it is very far off thinking that normal business expenditure would not be allowed. I touched this AAR also just to brought to your knowledge one very important aspect of business expenditures, this business promotion expenditure, allowability of credit on this business promotion expenditures. Sutherland Mortgage Services. This is also a beautiful AAR given by Kerala High Court. I would say beautiful because they came out with something. They came out with something in 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 other than affirmative, which was so obvious. Now, section 97, subsection 2 lists down on the basis of which these are the things on which advance ruling can be sought by the applicant. A person, not only a registered person, but a person on which the advance ruling can be sought. Now, in this judgment, Sutherland Mortgage Services went to the Honorable Advance Ruling Authority and asked, please tell us, we are providing this services to an entity outside India on the basis of our intercompany agreement. To customers located outside India only, there should not be any intermediary problem. There was no intermediary issue. There was no agent-principal relationship. The principal, which was situated in United States of America, had their customers outside India. They were not linked with India at all. We were not, the Sutherland Mortgage was not in between the principal and the prospective buyers here in India. That is the way only, wherein intermediary is the one who makes people meet buyer and prospective suppliers, prospective buyers and suppliers. They are bridging the gap between them. So the Sutherland was not doing it any sort of such situation. They were providing services to customers outside India of their entity, associated entity outside India. Of course, that section 2, subsection 8, export of service wala condition was complied. That was not the merely establishment of the entity situated in India. So they went to the Advance Ruling Authority and asked that whether it is a zero rated supply or not, and please provide us that whether it is taxable or not. The Advance Ruling Authority replied that in order to determine the nature of the transaction, whether it is zero rated or not, we would not be able to determine the place of supply because that is not covered under section 97, subsection 2 of the Act. Now, Sutherland, their argument was, and then they went to the Honorable Kerala High Court also, and the same thing is being pronounced by the Honorable High Court also. They said that while determining the rate of tax on a particular activity or nature of an activity, invariably you have to go back to determine the POS of that particular activity. Then only you can tell the type of tax which is attracted to that particular activity. So the Honorable High Court sent the case back and said that please consider the larger issue of determination of liability to pay tax. Determination of liability to pay tax would encompass determination of place of supply. Whether it is zero rated or not, how would you determine my liability? If it is zero rated, there would not be any liability to pay tax. If it is not, as per section 16 of the IGST Act, then certainly it would be. So they went to the High Court, and Honorable High Court said the same thing and said that it can be very well So this becomes a benchmark for various advanced ruling authorities who are denying to determine the place of supply. So that paves the way. Of course, if they accept it, that of course advanced ruling authorities paves the way to determine POS also under this particular clause, subclause E of 97(2). So this is one, I would say, because time is short, this Goa Industrial Development Corporation is about, again, Schedule 2, basically the refrain from an act, or to do an act, obligation to refrain from an act or do an act. So I'm not touching this thing because this has already been covered in the previous discussion. This one I just wanted to highlight because there is an exemption available under notification 12/17 CTR entry number 12 when there is a transfer of business as a going concern from one entity to another. When there is a business transfer agreement, even the entire project can be transferred from one entity to another, that shall still be considered to be as a going concern transfer and would be very much within the parameters of entry number 12 of notification number 12/17 CTR. So that is why I picked it up. And I just wanted to highlight again one important issue on the uh, taxability of GST on directors' remuneration. I just want to highlight this circular number 140. These are the two conflicting kind of advanced rulings. I don't want to go into Claycraft. Claycraft actually created the havoc into the industry, into the stakeholders across the country, and they came out on 10th June 2020 with a circular number 140, and they clarified. I just want to reiterate what the circular said, and then I will close down my presentation. Circular has categorically divided people, directors, into two types of directors. One who is a full-time director, who happens to be an employee of the organization, and another who is not a full-time but an independent director. And employer-employee relationship, which is very much established that there has to be control over the activities by the employer to the employee, then only the relationship of employer and employee can be established. Now, if a whole-time director who happens to receive salary on which TDS under section 192 of the Income Tax Act is being deducted, then certainly the relationship is that of employer and employee. So if the relationship, the control and supervision is there on the work done by the directors, by the company, then certainly the relationship between these two are employer and employee. And then Schedule 3, entry number 1 would come into picture and would outside the preview of GST. But if an independent director who is not involved in the day-to-day activities of the organization, and on the work of that director there is no control or supervision of the employer, that is company, then there would not be any employer-employee relationship. And the circular also clarified it very beautifully. And they have mentioned also that there is already established jurisprudence which are there. And I also have mentioned at various places in my YouTube videos and other presentations also, even before this circular came into picture. When Claycraft came, I recorded a video and I said the same thing. What later on the circular actually was revolving around. So just I wanted to bring home this last thing for the benefit of our viewers, that if there is an employer-employee relationship, would be subject to outside the preview, Schedule 3, entry number 1. If there would not be, and even if some payments are made under the head of professional fee or technical fee on which TDS, I'm telling you, why am I taking the name of TDS time and again? Because they have actually relied upon this particular classification, the rule of classification. If the income made to director is classified as a 192 TDS, no GST. If it is classified as 194J TDS, it is subject to GST. But entry number 6 of 13/17 CTR, reverse charge wala notification, the the tax is to be paid on this supply, not by the supplier, that is director, but by the recipient, that is company. And otherwise, if the director gives a car on rent or a property on rent to the company, then certainly, of course, with effect from 1st January 2020, even car rentals also in case of company corporates has come into reverse charge. But so far as immovable property is concerned, that would continue to be into the forward charge to be taxed by the director, and then the credit is to be taken by the recipient, that is the company. So that's what I wanted to bring home through these my some of the issues which I thought that it to be would be useful, and I picked up cases on the basis of the fact that I would be highlighting some of the issues only. And there is a lot of brainstorming going on amongst the professional circles, and even in the amongst the administrators. So I hope one thing I can hope that tribunals are set soon, so that justice is actually delivered to the majority. I would like to, at the end, thank all the participants for giving their patient listening, and of course the organizers, the Webtel, AFTP, and all the other people behind it, especially my friend, my younger brother Petam, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.